August 5th through the 11th. Online at ordway.org.
American Public Television presents the following program in high definition.
Landlocked Quito and Otavalo, high in Ecuador's Altiplano, are home to many indigenous people. The islands of Bartolomé, Española, and Genovesa, also in Ecuador, are significantly less populated. By humans, that is. All these places are part of a memorable journey to the Galapagos Islands.
Funding for The Desert Speaks was provided by Desert Program Partners, representing concerned viewers making a financial commitment to the education about and preservation of deserts, and by the Stonewall Foundation.
The desert islands called the Galapagos are to Ecuador what the lush Hawaiian Islands are to the United States. It's a province just as Hawaii is a state. Both of them are born of violent volcanic activity. Both are important tourist attractions and of great economic value as well. But while the native wildlife of Hawaii has been largely depleted, that of the Galapagos is still mostly intact. It's easy to get to Hawaii from almost anywhere. All flights to the Galapagos must stop in Quito first.
Damas y caballeros, estamos próximos a aterrizar en el aeropuerto Mariscal Sucre de la ciudad de Quito. Una vez más, pedimos a todos ustedes hacer uso del cinturón de seguridad.
At 9,000 feet, Quito is cold and damp, as is most of the Altiplano where the majority of Ecuadorians live. Many dwell in small villages where modern technology is beyond their means. The Republic of Ecuador is well named after the equator that passes through much of the country. This particular monument was put here to commemorate the equator and world peace. Unfortunately, according to my GPS, we're about 100 yards or so south of the equator. We're being led by the villagers and the GPS, I'm not sure which, to the real equator. The south latitude number is dropping even as we walk. Acá. Okay, aquí dice cero. And here I have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, where this GPS says the true equator is. I doubt there'll be roads like this on the Galapagos. They're mostly unpopulated. While we await our flight to see the bountiful wildlife on the islands, we squeeze in time to see the indigenous side of Ecuadorian life. This is the market of Otavalo. It's a couple hours drive north of Quito, the capital, and it's known throughout the world for its market. Entonces, así. This is made from the alpaca fur, which is very fine and is an important source of warmth for the cold, high Andes.
We as indigenous people have many customs and traditions. Our necklaces are for adornment and are worn by young and old alike. We speak Quechua and Spanish.
One of the oddities in Otavalo is the presence of Panama hats. Panama hats are not from Panama, they're from Ecuador, and they are great. Bueno, busco un sombrero, pero para mí, no para señora. One great thing about Ecuador is that their official currency is the dollar. So I can pay this in the same dollars as I got from an ATM in the United States, and they're quite happy to have it. 30.
Thank you.
Gracias, señora. Muchísimas gracias.
Igual manera. Le sacábamos todo el dinero.
These are all jungle animals. I see a sloth on here. I see an armadillo and various exotic birds. Ecuador is widely known for its Indian cultures, the high, cold Andes, woolen goods, the Altiplano. But I'm a desert rat, and what really appeals to me is some desert islands way to the west, the Galapagos. Lying 600 miles off the west coast of Ecuador, the Galapagos Islands are the best place in the world to see wildlife up close. Many of the same species that inspired Charles Darwin in 1835 with their tameness and uncanny variety still make these desert islands their home. And they're just as approachable. This guy's face looks just like E.T. out of the movie.
This was the inspiration of Steven Spielberg.
The Ecuadorian government requires tourists like me and my ecologist friend Yar Patrician to pay a steep entrance fee. That money goes for conservation and for infrastructure that we are happy they put to use on the island of Bartolomé. Larry, it was very nice of the National Park Service of Ecuador to build this stairway to enable us to get up and get the big picture up here of what's going on.
Oh yes, otherwise it will be very hard, because before we didn't have this, so only the strongest people can get to the top of this place.
The Galapagos Islands were born of fire and brimstone from the sea. Volcanologists, the people who describe them, developed their own special vocabulary. One of their terms describes this, a splatter cone.
Volcanics in the islands isn't just one event. There's a whole series of events. Lava flows, cinder cones, and splatter cones. You get fissures where magma wells up and breaches in certain places, and you get this molten globby material, and it just splatters, almost like a 4th of July fountain. And it's real sticky and splatters over to the side and eventually builds up this cone. And then the magma dissipates, and the residual is a series of cones, usually kind of in a line following the fissure, and there could be 3 or 4 in that line. The youngest islands in the Galapagos are on the west side. That's where the mantle plume, the magma, is upwelling and forming volcanoes. Since they're on a oceanic plate that is moving to the east, it ends up that the older islands are in the southeast part of the complex of the Galapagos Islands.
Volcanic islands are built of rough lava. Finding a landing place can be tricky indeed. Our guide, Harry Jimenez, is from the Galapagos and knows all the islands and how to get on them.
They are giving us the welcome to Española Island.
Un buen bienvenido.
They really love to surf right here.
So they actually play in the wave itself, right? That seems like a good idea to me.
You can really notice that the eyes are much bigger than your normal gull.
Yeah, because these birds are nocturnal, so they eat at night. And the red eye-ring plays a very important role in their life, because these, at night when it's dark, when they're in the open ocean, attract the squids. So the main diet for these birds are squids. So this is one of the nesting areas of Española Island, of marine iguanas, which is very close to the trail where we are passing by.
Marine iguanas lay eggs. They're a reptile. Typically, they'll protect the nest for about a week and chase other ones away, other iguanas. And after a week, then they leave, never to see their young again. And after an incubation of about 3 months, the youngsters hatch and dig their way out, and you got a new iguana. The Galapagos hawk mates for life, and that's unusual for these hawks because on the other islands, the female is polyandric, which means that she'll take on a couple of males.
This is the waved albatross. It only nests on Hispaniola Island. It's a very large bird and not particularly afraid of me or anybody else.
It's called waved albatross because the feather pattern on its breast is this wavy pattern. And there's 12,000 pairs that occur in the whole world, and all of them nest on this island.
Now I just jumped one of the
There's
birds.
one that just took off.
Yeah, because they're very heavy. So it's the largest bird in the Galapagos and the heaviest one. So they need big wings to lift their bodies, you know, in the air.
It's like a glider that we have
glider.
at home, you know, the airplane glider.
The swallow-tailed gull and the waved albatross of Hispaniola Island mate for life. Unlike many human beings, their fidelity is similar to that of the old faithful of Hispaniola, the blowhole. When the ocean's rough, it reaches over 100 feet high and can be quite intimidating if you're close by.
We don't have a lot of rain here because we don't have a lot of vegetation here. Around 10 inches every year in areas or islands like here.
There's enough goodies here. This is a portulaca. It's a native purslane. It has just the right amount of salt. So you could have here an Hispaniola Island salad without having to add any salt and maybe even any dressing. There's no need to starve here on Hispaniola Island if you're a complete vegetarian.
It's interesting that you have 3 species of boobies nesting here on the Galapagos. The red-footed booby forages further out, anywhere from 60 miles to 100 miles if they have to. The Nazca booby is kind of intermediate in distance, where the blue-footed booby forages just offshore. So they're partitioning that food resource into distance from their nesting sites.
The Nazca booby, it doesn't have blue feet the way its cousin does. It's just as mellow as the blue-footed booby. It has the black and white very clearly here on the back. It's just quite indifferent to my presence.
Well, this island of Hispaniola is all basalt. It's real dark black rock with a lot of iron, but here we have a white sand beach.
We have a lot of white coral, we have barnacles and shells. So all of these with waves breaking and the fishes, like for example parrotfish, they love to eat the white coral. And then they eat this and then digest and then it's coming out this very thin material, it's very fine.
So this isn't rock material at all, it's organic shell, coral and things like that ground up.
You know, the Ecuadorians, they feel very proud of this place because it's like the symbol, the attraction of not only Ecuador, it's the attraction also of South America. To me, it's everything. This is my world, this is my life, this is my home, Galapagos.
Only a few islands are home to humans, but all are home to strange birds and their even stranger behavior. Most of the islands lie south of the equator, unlike our next stop, Genovesa.
Nest on this island, apparently.
Genovesa Island is called the capital of the birds.
Aha. Okay, up we go. Pretty steep, huh?
Yeah.
Well, this lava here on Genovesa is really broken up. Probably some of this breakup is due to the shrinkage, and of course would fracture everything, but it looks like these bursters, these trees here, are having an effect as well.
Yeah, it looks like they are coming through the lava. Although that some of these plants and trees has very acid roots strong enough to dissolve this hard lava and use the minerals as nutrients for themselves. Besides that, the birds, like right there, produce a high quantity of guano, and that is a good fertilizer for the plants. The characteristic of the frigate birds, they are glider birds. They have long wings, about 6-7 feet across, and they have a very pointed, narrow wings that helps them to glide in that way, so they will be saving energies, you know, just gliding, like floating in the air, waiting for some other birds that will come from the ocean with food, and then they will steal them. Males develop this red balloon during the mating season. That's the attraction for the females. Normally the males are like in groups, you know, like 4 or 5. That makes easier for the females to choose one male.
Occasionally this gular sac, which is what this inflated thing is called, gets punctured either through fighting or through accident. And that puts an end to the mating display of the bird, perhaps only temporarily, but certainly for that season.
These frigate birds, how they have very tiny feet, so they are not nesting on the ground, so they're nesting on the bushes or trees, and they both build their nest. Nazca booby is a new name that they got because before we used to call them masked boobies because around their faces like a mask. And most of the islands are Nazca boobies.
You, my friend, are you not ashamed that come election day, you never bother to vote more than once? That's the indifferent, apathetic voter.
Red-footed boobies, how those birds are pelagic birds, that means that they're going very, very far out of the ocean, 40 or more nautical miles outside of the coast to fish. So we find them in the outside islands. Just to have an idea, here on Genovesa Islands are nesting around 140,000 pairs of red-footed boobies. Although that these birds, the red-footed boobies, have webbed feet like a duck, and also there is the smallest booby in the family. That's why it's easier for them to take off, not like the Nazca boobies that they prefer the cliff and always against the wind because they're much heavier. The little birds that we see flying around over here that looks like bats, these are called the storm petrel. The name petrel came from Peter because when they are fishing in the water trying to eat the little larvae by the surface, they're making like a 2-3 steps catching something on fly. You know, like Peter, when he was with Jesus, he told him that he can walk in the water, and he made like 2-3 steps and then he sank. These birds, they don't want to sink.
Harry, what are the top 3 or 4 things that tourists, those thousands of tourists, come to the Galapagos to see?
One of the symbols of the Galapagos are the giant tortoises. Oh, yeah. That's why the name of the islands. And also right now it's very, very popular for diving.
This area right through here is a good area to possibly see the Galapagos fur sea lion. Yeah, sometimes called fur seal, but it's really a sea lion. Notice the real long whiskers. Those whiskers are pressure sensitive, and so when they dive down 100 or 200 feet, it's pretty dark there, and they can sense the pressure caused by fish actually swimming. So it helps in their foraging at depth.
The Galapagos island called Genovesa is uninhabited, and it's with good reason. The shores are almost completely lined with steep lava cliffs, almost impossible to climb. Once you can get into the interior, it's very dry and hot and covered with just scraggly vegetation.
Look at the cactus right here.
Oh, this is a prickly pear, but understand that this is a prickly pear that the spines on it are really soft.
This is because on this island, these cactus, they don't have enemies like in some other islands, like the giant tortoises or land iguanas that prey on the cactus. So they don't need any protection.
Look at this. I can just rub, you wouldn't dare do this with a regular, normal prickly pear because these would be really stiff and poke you, plus those little stickers would be all over you. But that feels just like a brush haircut. Mangroves are specialized trees that can stand being in water at least part of the time. And so when at high tide, the water actually comes in here and the roots are submerged, and they're able to tolerate it by handling that, the salt in numerous ways. Oh, look, there's one of the seed pods from the red, yeah, mangrove.
And this is one of the few plants or trees that the seeds are already germinated. You know, they are
ready to go. Yeah. So this will drop off and they can float away to be planted somewhere else, or maybe stick into the mud and start a new plant from it.
And look at the red-footed booby right here.
Oh, no. You don't even notice them. They're just kind of hidden in there. I didn't even see it till I kind of moved the branches, and there it is.
Look at the head of that one. Looks like a afro.
Yeah, quite a little white fuzzball right there with a little black beak coming out. They're quite cute. And then they lose that down, and they're a juvenile like this.
This looks like nothing more than a garden of delights with enormous red fruits waiting to be plucked. Problem is that birds might take a dim view of that.
Pat said, talk about a singles club. These guys got it made.
Well, they have a lot of competition among the boys. If it's a fraternity and there's just a couple of young ladies on campus, they're sure competing for attention.
You take my breath away, honey.
Well, and all the female birds just circle around overhead, just waiting to come down and tease.
My ecologist friend Alberto Burques has only known the islands through the writings of the likes of Charles Darwin. Alberto has studied the Sonoran Desert for decades, but has waited all his life to come to the Galapagos.
The word equator brings to mind lush forests. However, in the Galapagos, we have extremely arid systems, something we can call desert. These deserts are created by many factors. Among them, the cold currents coming from Antarctica, the shadow effects of the mountains that cast a rain shadow on the other islands, the wind patterns, and also the surfaces, the lava surfaces that preclude the infiltration of water into the soil. Finding deserts along the equator is very rare. The Galapagos Islands is one of the rare examples of deserts along this equatorial imaginary line.
The fearless wildlife and the tortured landscapes of the Galapagos Islands fascinate us just as they fascinated Charles Darwin. The place is largely desert, and its wonders continue to unfold every day. The international tourists who flock here will testify. that this remote part of Ecuador.
So you might want to consider the next time you paint the house to change the color. So for instance, what you might do here is take this trim color and convert it from white to sort of a dull brown or taupe, and then change the color of these shutters to a really dark, sort of classic, I call it a Charleston green or a black green. The shutters would change, and then I would even add shutters under this charming porch you have on either side of these windows and paint that door dark as well. And that will cause the entire house to sort of recede and allow your landscaping to pop, because that's what you really are focused on. And I can see you've done some beautiful things here across the front of the house with your foundation planting. All right, with that said, let's take away these red lines. And I just want to give you a few suggestions on some plants you might consider. One thought is, I see you have a path that comes around the side of the house and across the front to this point. And what you might do is bring the entire bed out like this and let it move in this direction at the corner and come around and tie into that bed over there, and replace the stepping stones, these round concrete stones, with some flagstones, natural stones. And those could even be left in the lawn where this becomes bed here, or you could make it all one solid bed. And that's what I would recommend, with some kind of ground cover growing in between. You can try creeping Jenny. Now be careful, it can be very invasive. It's a fast grower. I would anchor this bed with some sort of tree here on the corner. That could be a beautiful Chinese fringe tree, which would do beautifully in your area. I would probably on this corner even accent it with a big bank of azaleas. Here you could use white azaleas. So you can see we're anchoring this corner. You're creating a focal point. You're breaking up that roof line, and you're using natural materials that carry you